I saw this headline from Vox and it was so bad, I had to bring it up. This headline here is relatively provocative. It says the Supreme Court effectively abolishes the right to mass protest in 3 U.S. states. It is no longer safe to organize a protest in Louisiana, Mississippi, or Texas. Well, that sounds a little bit dramatic. Supreme Court getting rid of the right to have a mass protest? Well, what's the real story behind this? Well, the real story is more like this. The court declines to intervene in a lawsuit against Black Lives Matter organizer. The Supreme Court on Monday declined to intervene in a lawsuit filed by a Louisiana police officer against the leader of the Black Lives Matter movement who organized a protest at which the police officer was seriously injured. The court's denial of review in McKesson versus Doe was part of a list of orders issued from the justices' private conference last week. The justices did not add any new cases to their docket for the 2024 term, yada, yada, yada. Here's where things get interesting. An issue in McKesson was whether DeRay McKesson can be held responsible for the officer's injuries when he did not directly harm the officer himself, but instead organized the demonstration and, the officer said, knew or should have known that violence would result. The case is one with which the justices were already familiar. In 2019, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit allowed the officer's lawsuit to go forward. McKesson then appealed the Supreme Court, where he argued that the lawsuit against him was barred by the First Amendment in the Supreme Court's 1982 decision in NAACP versus Claiborne Hardware, which limited the NAACP's liability for nonviolent protest that it organized. Well, the thing is, though, is that the officer says that he, quote, knew or should have known that violence would result from this protest, which makes sense. This is all Summer of Love stuff, I believe, where many Black Lives Matter and Antifa gatherings did end up being violent. Many people there were like, yes, let's be violent. They're very, very vocal about their support of violence, although I do understand that Black Lives Matter members were split on whether or not violence was justified for political means. And in the 1982 case, the NAACP specifically organized a nonviolent protest. You can't compare a nonviolent protest to a protest where some people are going to be violent, some people are going to be peaceful. What can you do? What can you do? It's just a big group of people having fun and talking about politics. You know, it's a false equivalency that the defendant here is trying to make. But I was just struck by how bad that Vox headline was, because the headline should really say, court essentially holds Black Lives Matter protester responsible for violence conducted by rioters. Something like that, right? Not the Supreme Court effectively removes the right for mass protests in 3 states, which is just like it's such a hilariously bad headline that either you would have had to have been given like the wrong snippets of information regarding that case, or you'd have to be deliberately lying in order to get a headline that bad. And I don't like using strong language or wording when it comes to, what people are doing politically and the messaging that they're putting out. But that is the case here. That is the case. This headline is egregiously wrong. Literally no one else is making headlines like this, I don't think. But they're just needlessly fear-mongering. Maybe it's because I think Vox is tied with Vice and they've been bleeding for money, so maybe they need the clicks, but it's just so absurdly bad. And it's a shame because a lot of people use Vox as a source too, and they can be a good source sometimes. They do have people there who do good journalism. But it's headlines like this that make me go like, what are you doing? And it makes me distrust you more. So Vox need to shape up their act. That was a shameful, absolutely shameful headline that they put out there.